Long before refrigeration, before chemical preservatives, and long before sealed containers, civilizations developed ingenious ways to keep food edible for months and even years. One of the most fascinating, and honestly, largely forgotten, methods was the use of a fungal dip. Now, this was not accidental mold growth or just random fermentation. It was a deliberate, controlled application of fungi that protected food from spoilage by creating a living barrier against decay. From Europe to Asia, people relied on this method to survive harsh winters, long journeys, and times of scarcity. Understanding how it worked gives us a window into both the resourcefulness and scientific intuition of our ancestors. Why ancient people realized that the right fungus could protect food instead of destroying it. In a world without refrigeration, food exposed to air would always be colonized by something. The challenge was not preventing life from growing, which was pretty much impossible, but controlling which organisms dominated. Ancient cultures observed that some molds caused rapid rot and illness, while others spread evenly, smelled clean, and stopped harmful bacteria in their tracks. By identifying and encouraging these protective fungi, people created a natural shield over their food. This was a conscious application of biology long before microbiology existed. So, here's how the fungal dip created a protective coating for stored foods. The real strength of the dip was in its ability to form an immediate, dominant layer over food surfaces. And, when it was applied correctly, the fungus would colonize the surfaces of meat, cheese, or grain really quickly. This living layer actually consumed oxygen, changed the surface pH, and released compounds that stopped harmful bacteria and other molds from taking hold. In essence, the fungal dip worked as a living armor defending the food's interior while, keeping the product stable. Unlike modern refrigeration, which just slows decay, this method actively prevented it from happening in the first place. Why environmental conditions were essential to the dip's effectiveness. The fungal dip could not work under just any circumstances. You see, temperature, humidity, airflow, and even the salt content of the food all affected how the fungus would behave. Ancient people learned to create ideal conditions for protective growth. Cellars, shaded rooms, stone vessels, and specific storage routines were all chosen to maintain the life of the fungus while keeping harmful microbes at bay. These storage practices were just as important as the dip itself, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of how organisms interact with their environment. The fascinating interplay of fermentation and the fungal dip in preserving food. You see, in many cases, the fungal dip was part of a clever two-step process. First, the food was salted, soaked, or partially fermented to stabilize its interior. This fermentation process reduced pH levels, modified nutrients, and suppressed unwanted bacteria. Once the food was stabilized, the fungal dip was applied to its exterior. This combination ensured that both the inside and outside of the food were well protected, enabling it to last for months without the need for refrigeration. Quite ingenious, isn't it? This synergy really explains why foods like aged cheeses, cured meats, and fermented pastes became reliable staples across many cultures. They were not just delicious, but also practical and dependable. Why this method was crucial for armies, travelers, and traders. The fungal dip was not a luxury, it was survival. Armies marching through Europe relied on cheese and cured meat that would not spoil in the field. Merchants transporting grain across regions depended on similar preservation techniques to protect their cargo. The dip allowed food to endure long distances, variable climates, and storage conditions that would have destroyed unprotected goods. In this sense, the fungal dip was both a practical and strategic technology. Ancient people identified safe fungal cultures without any scientific instruments. There were no microscopes, no pH meters, and, well, certainly no lab tests. Instead, their knowledge was sensory, observational, and, passed down through generations. Safe fungi had a consistent color, texture, and aroma. These safe cultures would spread evenly and usually smelled clean or earthy. On the other hand, dangerous growths were irregular, slimy, or had a foul smell, and were, of course, discarded. Families often kept their starter cultures for generations, reusing the same vessels and tools to make sure the protective fungi continued on. This careful cultivation was a form of early microbiology practiced in every household. The rise of mechanical refrigeration and canned food after the 19th century made fungal dips largely obsolete. Cold storage slowed microbial growth without requiring careful cultivation, and modern preservatives replaced the need for biological management. However, the principles behind the method, understanding and directing living systems to achieve stability, remain relevant today, particularly for survivalists, historians, and anyone interested in low-tech resilience. How modern survivalists can learn from the fungal dip without risking health. While attempting the exact fungal dip today without training is unsafe, the principle can be applied safely through controlled fermentation, probiotic cultures, and understanding how microorganisms interact with food. Studying the fungal dip teaches patience, observation, and environmental management, all of which are essential skills for self-reliance and historical reconstruction. Why the ancient fungal dip still matters today. This forgotten technique reminds us that humans once relied on deep biological knowledge to survive harsh conditions. It offers lessons in resilience, resourcefulness, and the intelligent use of living systems. In an age where refrigeration is, pretty much everywhere but still vulnerable, understanding how our ancestors preserved food with what was available to them is both inspiring and practical. If you value historical ingenuity, survival knowledge, and practical lessons from the past, go ahead and subscribe to Echoes of Valor. Share this video with someone who appreciates the overlooked technologies of our ancestors, and help keep alive the wisdom that once protected civilizations from starvation and spoilage.